Guys, and welcome back to another video, and today I am back with another new case for you guys. But before we get into today's True Crime Tuesday video, I just want to do the usual. So if you're new here, my name's Amber. I upload beauty, fashion and lifestyle content, and on a Tuesday I like to do a little bit of true crime. So if that is the type of videos that you like to watch, then please hit that subscribe button and come along and join my little family. And if you're already part of the family, then make sure that notification bell switch on just so you're notified of whenever I upload a video. Why not give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. Now we can get right into today's case. I just want to do my quick little disclaimer that I do on every True Crime Tuesday video, that I do not mean any disrespect to anyone mentioned in this case. I've literally just compiled everything together to create this educational video for you guys. So today's case is actually an American case, and it is actually about the disappearance of a Yale student called Annie Lee. It was classed as a disappearance and a missing persons case for a couple of days until a body was found, and this case is now a solved case. Again, like all cases, it is absolutely devastating to think that this poor young girl has lost her life, but I really wanted to tell her story. So 5 days before her wedding, Yale graduate student Annie Lee vanished. September 13th, 2009, the 24-year-old's mangled body was found behind the wall of a Yale laboratory where she worked. It was on her wedding day. I mean, that is just, can you imagine that? Can you imagine her boyfriend? Because can you imagine her fiance? So I just want to give you a little backstory about Annie. I always like to do this. Annie was born on July 3rd, 1985 in San Jose, California. She was born to a Vietnamese American family, and she spent her childhood with her aunt and uncle. She was a valedictorian of her graduating class at Union Mine High School, which was further north in El Dorado, California. And she was voted one of two students to be the next Einstein. She was a very, very intelligent, clever girl who had basically her bright future ahead of her that was stolen away from her, and it's just not fair. So after earning approximately £160,000 in scholarship money, she attended and graduated the University of Rochester in New York. Her major was in cell developmental biology with a minor in medical anthropology. Annie was then accepted into a graduate program at Yale that would have led to her earning a doctorate in pharmacology. So her research had actually been about the treatment of diabetes and certain forms of cancer, and she was due to be married on September 13th, 2009, which was the date that her body was unfortunately found. And she was due to be married in Syosset, New York, to her fiance Jonathan Wodowski. And he was also a graduate student who had graduated in applied science and mathematics at Columbia University. So on the morning of September 8th, Annie left her apartment and travelled to Sterling Hall of Medicine on the Yale campus. Around 10 AM the same day, she then walked from the Sterling Hall to another campus building at 10 Armistead Street, which was where her research laboratory was. And Annie was then captured by a security camera entering the laboratory building at the School of Medicine. None of the 70 odd cameras that surrounded the area actually ever saw her leave, which was bizarre. So obviously when police started looking into this, when she was classed as a missing person, they checked all of these cameras, and over the course of the few days that she was missing before her body was found, there was no sign that she'd ever left the building, which is when they started to get very suspicious. When Annie had left her house on the morning, she had her purse, a cell phone and credit cards and cash. The police started to search her office at Sterling Hall. They actually found that her purse, her cell phone, her credit cards and cash were there. So it was highly unlikely that she had just disappeared. Where would she go to without any money or any contact to anyone? She couldn't just disappear if she had no money. So it got to around 9 PM on the evening of September 8th, and Annie had still not returned home. So one of her 5 housemates actually decided to call the police and declare that she was missing, because obviously this was clearly odd behaviour for her. So because the security footage didn't show her exiting the building, the police then decided to start and investigate the full building. So they closed the full building down in order to do so. They were obviously clearly trying to look for clues for Annie's whereabouts. The FBI FBI and the New Haven Police Department and the Connecticut State Police were all involved in the search, so she had a lot of people looking for her. One day turned into days, and these days just passed, and then worries began to increase because Annie was very smart, she was fun-loving and endlessly energetic. People started to think that foul play was at foot, especially with her belongings being left in her office. Yale even offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to her whereabouts, and her fiance Jonathan came up from New York and her family came up from California. And then Annie's disappearance actually became the top story. It soon became the top story in the national news, and there was dozens of reporters and TV trucks swarming the medical campus and the streets outside of her apartment. More than 100 law enforcement officers joined the search, focusing on the lab building at 10 Armour Street because obviously they knew that she hadn't exited the building. Then on Saturday, investigators discovered bloody clothing hidden in a ceiling tile, but grimly expanding to include, among other places, a trash incinerator 40 miles away. 5 days after Annie had disappeared, on Sunday, September 13th, her planned wedding date, authorities discovered her body in a cable chase. The body had been hidden inside, behind a utility panel of the wall of the basement laboratory in the Armistead Street building. She'd been strangled, and she'd never left the building like they suspected. The building and the area were monitored by about 70 to 75 security cameras, and the entrance to the building and the rooms inside the building required a Yale identification card. It wasn't just as easy as you could walk up to the door and walk in. That just wasn't the case. You literally needed an access card to be able to get into the building. The basement where Annie's body was found housed animals that were used for experiments and research, and due to the high security measures in the building, authorities and Yale officials maintained that it would be extremely difficult for someone without a Yale ID card to enter the basement laboratory where her body was discovered, leading them to focus their investigation on Yale employees and students. Speculation arose that this had been an inside job, so the police and people around her began to think that, you know, how could this have been anyone other than someone that was in that lab with her? It was clearly someone she was working alongside. So the Connecticut Medical Examiner's autopsy found that Annie's death was due to traumatic asphyxia due to neck compression, so she had been strangled. And according to the prosecutors, her bra was pushed up and her panties were pulled down. Semen was found on her panty liner, which would later be found to match another Yale student named Raymond J. Clark III, who was 24 years old. He also worked in the same lab building as the victim, which was what was suspected all along. And her jaw and collarbone were also broken. On September 17th, the police actually arrested Raymond Clark. The previous day, he was actually taken into custody after police obtained a warrant to collect his DNA samples from him, and he was released after providing a sample. So after he was arrested, he was actually held on a £3 million bail at the McDougall War Correctional Institution, which was a maximum security prison in Suffield, Connecticut. He appeared in Connecticut State Superior Court on October 6, 2009 and did not then enter a plea to the charges. His hearing was then delayed until January 26, 2010, since not all the materials in the case had been available to lawyers. So Raymond initially pleaded not guilty on January 26th. His pre-trial hearing was scheduled for March 3rd, 2010 in New Haven, and the pre-trial evidence processing was scheduled for July 26th. In October 2010, Raymond's case was continued and another hearing was scheduled for February 9th, 2011. In March 2011, Raymond entered a guilty plea for Annie's murder in exchange for a 44-year prison term for murder and 20 years for first-degree attempted sexual assault, which was to run concurrently. On an additional charge of attempted sexual assault of Annie, he entered an Alford plea. So an Alford plea is basically that they have a lot of evidence that is sufficient to say that you did the act. So you are basically admitting to a guilty plea, but you're not taking any responsibility for your actions, and you're not admitting that you did it, but you were taking a guilty plea. It sounds very confusing, but that's basically what it is. So it basically concedes the sufficiency of the evidence against him. Raymond officially entered the plea on March 17th, and he was formally sentenced to 44 years imprisonment on June 3rd. While Raymond expressed great remorse at his sentence, sentencing, he offered no explanation for the attack, and he never ever gave a motive. He offered an apology to the victim's family and loved ones before being handed his verdict, but again he did not offer any reason behind murdering the victim. He said, quote, "I take full responsibility for my actions. I alone am responsible for the death of Annie Lee and causing tremendous pain to all who loved her and cared about Annie. I am truly sorry I took Annie away from her friends, her family, and most of all her fiancé. I have always tried to do the right thing and stay out of trouble, but I failed. I took her life and continue to lie about it, while Annie's friends, family and fiancé sat and waited. I really never wanted to harm anyone or cause any emotional pain to anyone. All I wanted was to be a good son, a good brother and a good fiancé, but again I failed. I blame only myself and there are no excuses for what I've done. Annie was and will always be a wonderful person, by far a better person than I will ever be in my life. I'm sorry I lied, I'm sorry I ruined lives, and I'm sorry for taking Annie Lee's life." End quote. Raymond is now serving his sentence at Cheshire Correctional Institute as an inmate, and he is scheduled for release on the 16th of September 2053. Memorials for Annie were held in California and Huntington, New York, and the funeral was broadcast live on the internet. The Yale community also publicly mourned Annie's death, and the Yale Daily News reported that the professor and Cold War historian John Lewis Gaddis called September 14th the saddest day to open class since the day after the 9/11 attack. She was clearly well loved by the people that she worked with and who she surrounded herself with. Her friends, her family clearly really loved her, and I think it's absolutely disgusting that someone feels like they have the right to take that life away from someone. I just don't understand what goes on in people's thought processes. I really don't understand it, and it's saddening, and it's really sad. Obviously it's nice that this case, it's bittersweet because it's nice that the case is solved and the family have answers, but it's also absolutely heartbreaking to think that, you know, maybe for them couple of days that they did hold out hope that she had literally just disappeared rather than being murdered. I can't imagine those few days of not knowing what was going on with her. I can't imagine in cases like this, you know, like how people go years without knowing what's happened to someone. It must be so hard to deal with, but I'm just so glad that the family finally have peace. This one is such a sad one, it really is. I just found it so interesting. This did garner so much attention from press, and I think it was the fact that she was missing but she went in and never come out, so where could she have been? It was such a small, there was such a small area that she could have, there was very little chance that she could have like managed to get herself around and away from the cameras, with there being like 70 cameras. But I just really wanted to cover this case. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video, and I will see you in next week's True Crime Tuesday. Thanks so much for watching. Mwah. Let me know what your thoughts on this case are down below.